See on Monday, January 22nd, right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios and 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We had a great weekend at the Rock. We had a great weekend at my house. It was fantastic. Got to do some really cool things and had a really good day at the Rock. Hope everybody else had a really good day. Kind of was a little bit wet, a little bit cold in Lubbock today, but it was things were on fire inside the building right here, and really did have a good day. I got to had a couple of cool things happen. One of the cool things that happened to me this weekend is I got to go to a track meet. My daughter works for Texas Tech Athletics, and they had a Texas Tech track team is tops in the nation almost every year in indoor and outdoor track. So we've got a fantastic indoor facility. And I got to go spend some time with Caitlin and go to the indoor track meet, and it was really great. We had teams from Miami, Ohio State, LSU, Kentucky, Central Florida, Oklahoma, Kansas State maybe. Baylor was here. Of course, Texas Tech was rocking with the whole thing. So there's some independent people. So it was really good for my brain. I really enjoyed it. I got to go hang out with some and see some athletes. It's been a while since I've been around college athletes, and it was really inspiring to see them. It was inspiring to see what you can do with your body when you're dedicated to competing at the highest levels, and to watch those athletes perform and compete and to be at the top of their game in almost every aspect of the way that their bodies are functioning. The coaches were working, the fans were there, the teams were competing. It was really inspiring to go to the track meet. So if you guys ever get a chance to do something like that, if you're around Lubbock, it'd be great. If you wanted, it's $8, I think, for an adult to get in, and for the ticket. You can stay as long as you want to. They got a concession stand there. I'm sure there's not anything healthy to eat there, but they got something to drink. You probably get some water if you wanted. And it would be, if you've never been to one of those, it's a really cool event. It's it's right there next to Jones Stadium inside the indoor track facility at Texas Tech, and it was really inspiring. I thought it was fantastic, and then we got to watch some football, got to have a fire going at the house. And that was great. And our man Patrick Mahomes and his Kansas City Chiefs pulled out a victory last night in Buffalo. So those guys are moving on. So there's another Red Raider that's competing at a high level. And so that was fun to watch. And then, of course, yesterday we went to church and got the show for today. So I appreciate Hillside Church for setting us up with some curriculum that we can teach on Monday nights, because we take health to church on Monday nights. And we're going to get into that here shortly. About it's sadness and depression tonight is the subject. I know it's not funny, but it's kind of like, dang, man. It's like you go from being inspired to go to sadness and depression, right? And for all you guys out there that are dealing with sadness and depression, I am not laughing at you. It seems like I am, but I am not laughing at you. You know me by now, that it's just kind of like, man, sometimes it's like we could be inspiring on this show, but tonight we're going to try to be inspiring when we talk about it. But there was a couple things that happened in the office today, and there were a couple conversations that I had, and I'm not going to name any names, but I had this topic come up 3 different times today, and I just want you to know that I want you to know about the idea that you can get a certain distance down the road where your brain gives up on you before your body gives up on you. And when that happens, you're not really going to know it. You're not going to know that your brain's has given up on you before your body gives up on you. But the reason I share that information is because that's important for the people who are around you, because they need to understand exactly what's happened to you, because there's not a lot that I know of that can turn the tides to save your life, to get you back to where you're supposed to be. And it's a warning shot, really, to when you start to study it and you want to understand it, and it's kind of like it's we sometimes don't. I've never had anybody explain it to me, but I really think this is the way that it works. I think we're born, obviously, at some point in our life, we're born. And then we go a certain ways down the road, and then we're going to die. And that's obvious, right? Everybody knows that. Well, there's a point between those two, and I think we've talked about it before, but there's a point in between those two that sometimes a person gives up. And they can either give up by their own free will, or their brain can give up for them. Meaning they have run the system for such a long time wrong. That they've mistreated the cells in their brain for such a long period of time that the cells just don't have the capacity other than a miracle. And we believe in miracles, and we believe in miracles at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We believe that is open all the time, that a miracle is a possibility. But there is a time when a person gives up, not just they don't choose to give up, but their brain just gives up on them, and then they're still alive. And the distance, and that's what I have described as the distance, is what I call hell on earth. Is that distance between the time you give up to the time you die. Because what you really want to do is you really want to give up after you die. If you had the choice, you would be better off to fire the pathways and drive all the way through death. And then, like a candle in the wind, boom, you're out, you're gone, you gave up, boom, you're dead, you're going on to the next thing, right? I think that's how it works. I think that's what I see a lot of. And when you get to that point, to where your brain gives up on you before your body gives up on you, one of the things that you got to remember is that upper brain is your rational brain. And that lower brain is your emotional brain. And when you are caring for someone who that's already happened to, that rational brain is not working properly. And if it doesn't matter what you say to them. Like it doesn't matter. I had a conversation with a girl today, and her father-in-law is in that state right there. He's 71 years old. He's a prostate cancer survivor. He just went through chemotherapy, and he's in that state right now to where he has given up. He doesn't know it, but his brain has given up. And she is mad, and the husband is mad, and the other siblings are mad, and they're just like, they just can't get him to do anything. They can't get him to get up and walk, and they can't get him to do what he's supposed to do. And they're like, well, they try to tell him, and they try to ration with him, and they try to talk to him, and it just doesn't work. And that state right there, I don't know what you do, because you can't get them up. If you can't get their feet working, and you can't get their body to respond, because they really need like a jump start. They need jumper cables to boom, let's go. Like get that battery recharged in order to get them to go. And the way that you might could work with their feet, you might could get a pedal with them with their feet. You might get them, you could try to get them to walk, but I know that a lot of times they won't. But I actually had this conversation with 3 different patients today, 3 different times. And none of them heard the other person having this conversation. So it's just one of those things that it's a tough thing to do. And I think the most important thing to understand is for the people who are still here. That's what you're learning from those scenarios. If you're still here and you're listening to the show and you're not in that state, then I really do encourage you to take that information and say to yourself, man, I got to be ready for when that day comes, and I got to keep myself driving forward, and I got to drive through that, because that is a threat to me in the future. I've got to have a plan for that, because that is something that is a threat to me. I've got to be able to, if I ever get to that position, I've got to be able to get into that position and say, okay, I'm still moving, I'm still moving, I'm still moving. I still got to move. I'm still got to keep things going. And I need to do it today so that I can move it forward. So that was really the big thing that was on my mind from the conversations that we had today in the office, that if you're listening and you're one of those people, then it's difficult, because you're not really listening rationally. I can't really talk to you rationally. I can only talk to you emotionally. And so I just don't think this girl was so frustrated with her father-in-law because he didn't think he could get any better. And I'm like, being frustrated is not really going to work. That doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't do you any good to be frustrated because the person has lost the capacity to get well. And when you lose the capacity to get well, you're on your way to dying, and it's hell on earth when you have to deal with it. So just make sure that you yourself understand that, so that you can do better. So let's get into the show. Our church is doing several Sundays of a series, and it's called Mental Health and the Bible. And they're trying to cover mental health the best they can. And so what we do on Monday nights when we take health to church is we take what's going on in the Bible, in the teachings at church, and then we apply it to our health and see if we can take those teachings and then apply health strategies to make us better, right? That's what we try to do. So you guys that are watching the show regularly, you understand that that's what we do on Monday nights. And so last week we were breaking down anxiety, right? And I think the topics something. Let me see what we did last week. Worry and anxiety. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. Worry and anxiety. And this week we're going to break down sadness and depression. And so the text that we were working through is Lamentations. And I can be quite honest with you. I'm almost positive that I have never read a single word in Lamentations. I'm almost positive I didn't even know that was a book in the Bible, to tell you the truth. I never learned that song that has all the books in the Bible when I was in when Sunday school back in the day, or at least if I did, I forgot all that stuff. So when he said turn to Lamentations chapter 3, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to use the tabs to find that one, because I didn't know that was a book. So I learned something yesterday, and it was quite eye-opening about what it was. I thought it was quite good, actually. But I'm not afraid to say it. Sometimes you just didn't know it was there. So that's just the way life goes. So we started in, I think, Lamentations 3:18, I believe, is the level that we started there. And I want to make sure that we cover these big things, because I really am impressed with the pastor that's teaching these lessons, and his passion and his humbleness to try to reach people who might be depressed. And so he has a very kind heart when it comes to trying to reach those people who are dealing with depression. And then afterwards, after we went home yesterday, my daughter and I, she's a very spiritual girl, and we had a really good conversation about the teachings and about the lesson, and about the struggles that each one of us have when it comes to depression, because everybody has a different set of tools, and not everybody has the toolbox that I have as a chiropractor. Not everybody has, as a wellness chiropractor who does functional neurology, not everybody that deals with depression has the same toolbox, and the pastor does not. The pastor does not have that same toolbox. So at the end of the day, the pastor gets to a little bit it gets a little bit handcuffed with his ability to help. I'm not saying that the Bible can't help, and I'm not saying that the Spirit can't help, but the Holy Spirit can't help, and that the teachings of the Bible, I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm saying that we're kind of getting into rational things right there. And my daughter and I had a really deep conversation about my passion for people that have depression and my passion for people, period, and really what chiropractic was all about. And what I see in somewhere in this book, and I don't know exactly what the chapter and verse is, but somewhere in this book it says that when the body gets cut off from the head, the body goes into a state of disorder. And it's talking about the body, we as the body of Christ, when we get cut off from the head, which is Jesus, we lose our way. And I learned early, 20 years ago, that when I was getting into this whole thing, that what chiropractic is it's the spiritual it's the physical manifestation of that spiritual principle. That's what drives me to go to work every day. The subluxation is the subluxation is light, right? From the very first day we had this show and multiple times on this show, one of the things that I have tried to share with you is that lux means light and subluxation means being in a state less than light. You are the light of the world. I am the light of the world. And as Zay told me when he got back from New York City over the Christmas break, he said he went up into the top of the Empire State Building and he looked down at the people on the sidewalk, and they looked like little bitty pieces, like little grains of sand on a beach. Like they looked like little bitty specks down there. And he thought to himself, what a small thing we are as a human race, as a human being. What a small, tiny little speck. If you get up high enough, what a small little tiny speck that we are. But as an individual speck, we are the light of the world. We are the light of the world. That's what chiropractic is it's the removal, it's the detection and correction of the subluxation. That's what it is. And it really, really is that to me. It's not fixing your neck pain and your back pain. The neck pain and the back pain is a downstream result of being subluxated. You lost your light first, then you had back pain. You lost your light first, then you had neck pain. You lost your light first, then you had numbness and tingling in your hands. You've got to get that back. So when we deal with depression and anxiety in our office, we're really like it's a serious thing to us too. I don't treat depression and anxiety. I adjust people who are subluxated. I don't want you to be subluxated. And I think I can make a pretty good argument based on almost 24 years of deep study on this. I think I can make a pretty good argument about the neurology of depression and about what's going on with a person. And so the things that we have, that is the whole point. The whole point of chiropractic care is to connect you back, to turn your power on. And we say that all the time. When someone gets adjusted, we're like, your power's on. Well, we say your power's on, meaning your light is back on. You are now free of a subluxation for the moment until your physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses kick it back in, which causes it back to repeat itself again. Right? So that's what I'm trying to do. That is seriously and honestly what I'm trying to do in my office every single day with chiropractic, is turn your power back on, help you be the light of the world, and make the spiritual law manifest itself in the physical to connect you back to the head so that your body is connected to your head and that your body will function the way that your head wants it to function. As we as a body of Christ function the way that the head, Jesus, wants us to function. That's exactly what we do. So every single symptom that you have, regardless of its back pain or neck pain or depression or sadness and depression, every one of those things are just a sign to me that there's some sort of interference in the perfection that's already there with you. It's just kind of interfering with it. And sometimes it's natural interference. Sometimes when you lose a spouse or a loved one or a child or something, there's a grief there that is just so deep. And I don't have a single way of getting around it. I haven't figured out how to do it. It's as real as this table is real right in front of me. Like it is a phenomenon of grief that we go through that makes us sad. There are things that make us sad, and there are things that make us depressed, but that doesn't have to stay that way. So as we are going through this, just know that that's what we're really trying to help you. And what the pastor keeps saying every week is two things. You are not alone in your struggle. If you're dealing with depression, you are not alone in your struggle. Everybody at some form or fashion deals with sadness and depression. Either mild, moderate, or severe. Everybody is dealing with it. You may be dealing with it in a severe manner. You may have some very severe things that are going on in your life that's causing you to be sad and depressed. No question, no argument. I'm not saying that you don't, not arguing against it. And it may be 100% legitimate. And then the other point that he always tries to make is God alone secures the victory in your struggles. And that's where we kind of have a different take from the pastor's point of view and from our office and the chiropractor's point of view. We have a little bit of a different take. We both believe that sentence is true. God alone secures the victory in your struggles. What I see is as the physical manifestation is the laws that God put into order and the way that the body works. So when God alone secures the victory, I believe that the victory has been secured inside your body. I believe that there is a neurology. I believe that there is a actual physical, neurological pathway that solves your depressive problem, that solves that sadness problem. I think that you can work your way through it and out of it on the other side, and that there is a divine system that your body is running off of that is there to secure the victory in your struggle. So I don't think it's just a prayer spiritual component. I think it's actual, as physical as gravity is physical. As gravity, I drop that pen, it hits the table, right? It's like that to me is God. That is the law and order of the universe. That is something I can count on. I never have to worry about when I let go of this pen, I never have to worry whether or not it's going to hit this table. I know you guys on the radio can't see me, but you can hear it. I can drop a pen and you can hear it hit the table, right? So I never have to worry about that. I will never, ever worry if I drop this pen if it's just going to float. Or if I drop this pen, if it's going to shoot and hit that window. I don't think this pen is going to jump up and go that way, right? Because I've learned what God taught me about gravity. This is the way gravity works. I put it in order in the first 6 days. That's the way it works. Don't worry about it. So I believe that there are some things that he set the victory to our struggles, but he did it in a way that we can actually see and measure and work on to help the way that our brains will work. And I really do believe that that's the case. So we're both in the same boat as far as that comes. Sadness and depression has 3 different components according to the teaching yesterday. Spiritual depression, situational depression, and biological depression. And spiritual depression can be not just it can be a depression of obedience was one of the things that he said yesterday. Sometimes God tells you to do something and you do it and you know you're supposed to do it and you're doing it, but it comes with consequences to doing it because people don't like it and you're not very popular because you're doing it. So this show could be considered that right there to a certain extent, right? This show could be a certain amount of unpopularity because I'm going to tell you the way that I really see it, regardless of whether or not people agree with it. Right. So that's that you can get into a depression. Now, I'm not depressed about this show, but there are some examples that were used yesterday. The other one is situational depression. You can have depression from someone else that's going through rough situations, or you can have a spouse, or you can have a child, or you can have there could be other things in your life. You could have gotten into some sort of wreck and created some sort of damage to yourself, or there could have been there could be different things. I had a patient tell me today that her husband got his finger caught in a grinder, and it grinded it down to the bone. Then the bone got infected, and then it went septic, and then he had to be on IV antibiotics he's been on for 40 something days, or he was in the hospital, all this sort of thing, right? That's a situation that might make someone depressed, that might cause problems for that person and cause depression for them. And then the last one is biological depression, and I do not believe that the majority of it is caused from damage. I do believe there's chemical imbalances based on the environment. I'm an epigenetics believer when it comes to that. And so maybe we could break a little bit of that down as we go through this next part. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back right after these messages. And this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. Yeah, that third one is biological depression. And almost always when I hear someone talk about depressed, especially if they're young people, they'll be told that they have a chemical imbalance that's causing their depression, right? And we've mentioned this multiple times too. The chemical imbalance is the result of the environment by which the brain has been put in, or the body has been put in, that expresses itself, the depression. That's where the chemical imbalance comes into play. That's what I don't think that the majority of people who've been told they have a chemical imbalance. Do I think there could be some people? Yes. Do I think there are a very small percentage of people? Yes. I don't think it's a major people. If you've been told I have a chemical imbalance, that's why I have depression, I will argue that the chemical imbalance is the result of the environment that your brain is in. And I can point that out to you as we go through this show. And I'm going to point that out to you as we go through this show. So I just don't think I don't believe that that's true. Because all of a sudden someone comes out of depression and all of a sudden they don't have a chemical imbalance anymore. Or what caused the chemical imbalance in the first place? What was the chemical, if you can solve the depression, then it wasn't some sort of brokenness that caused the chemical imbalance. I think there could be a group of people, very small, that have some damage to the cells in the brain that cause the chemicals to be out of balance, that might actually be dealing with that. I don't think, and then they may need medication to solve that problem. And I think that that's 100% true, that could be the case. But I think the majority of us that get depressed and sad and we can't get out of it, we're putting our brain in an environment that's incongruent with health. And now it's expressing a chemical imbalance that's causing us to be depressed. Then we take a medication and we feel better, but the medication doesn't solve the problem, because as soon as we quit the medication, then the depression comes back. I've had that happen lots of times. I've asked the patients, what happens when you quit your antidepressants? Well, I get depressed again. Well, then it didn't solve your problem, right? You didn't get healed from your problem. All you did is just shut off the neurological pathways that are there, but the body's not that dumb. The body knows, and the body will bring it back around to you in other things because it wants to get it addressed. So let's get back on the show and we'll get to it. Okay, so we're back. This is Jason Clemmons, DC. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. And we're talking about sadness and depression tonight. And so the last one was biological depression. So we got spiritual depression, situational depression, and biological depression. And when he got into Lamentations, he was talking about the prophet Jeremiah. And it was written soon after the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC. So we're talking about a long time ago, right? And what Jeremiah the prophet, he was called to be a light into the world, and the world hated him for it. That's great, right? I mean, you're a prophet, you got a word from God, and God told you that you should be doing this, and you're doing it, and you're not very popular in doing it. That's spiritual depression right there. The obedience part is putting the screws on you a little bit. That's causing that. And it, even those specifically chosen by God have faced moments of depression. So that's kind of the point of you're not alone. And I think this is huge, really. If you really do think about this, and there's a quote from Moses here in Numbers, but we'll go ahead and do that first. In Numbers 11, 14, and 15, and it says, I cannot carry all these people by myself. The burden is too heavy for me. If this is how you are going to treat me, put me to death right now. If I have favor in your eyes, and do not let me face my ruin. Yeah, that's Moses in Numbers 11, 14, and 15. If this is how you are going to treat me, put me to death right now. He's telling God, look, if this is what I have to go through, man, end the pain right now. And that's Moses. I mean, come on. Like, one day he parts the Red Sea. He brings the people out of Egypt. He leads them all. And the next day he's like, man, I've had so much, I can't stand any more of this. You might as well put me to death, right? He didn't commit suicide. He did not choose that route right there. And that's not the route that you should go. But even the greatest of all time have had moments of depression, right? That's what Jeremiah was saying in Lamentations 3, 17 and 18. I have been deprived of peace. I have forgotten what prosperity is. So I say, my splendor is gone, and all that I had hoped from the Lord. Like it's like sometimes you're trying so hard. Sometimes things are not mapping out the way that you want them to map out. Sometimes you're on the right track, but it takes some trials, right? That's where we came up with hope last time. So I just want to encourage the people that have depression. If you're going through a depressed time right now, you're not alone. The greatest of all time have been through depression. The greatest of all time have had moments where they just had so much trouble that they didn't know what to do with it. And so how does that relate to the way that your brain is functioning? Because that's where we go in. That's that we're having. We kind of lucked out that we're getting to do the Master and His Emissary at the same week that we're doing the church is doing these Bible in the mental health, because they just go hand in hand if you understand the mechanisms of the brain about what's going on and how the brain is functioning and which part of the brain is going together. And so there's an idea, there's a fact here that left anterior frontal lobe lesions equal depression. Left anterior frontal lobe lesions. Now, this is someone who actually has physical damage to the left anterior frontal lobe. And they can no longer inhibit the right lobe. So what Dr. McGilchrist has taught me is that because let's go back. We fire it into the right brain, we pass it over to the left brain, right? But once the left brain gets it, now we've got this back and forth between the two hemispheres, and the left brain will inhibit the right brain and calm the right brain down. Well, if we don't have any left brain activity, if we have a lesion in the left brain and we lose that ability to inhibit across to the right, then now what we've got is this overactive right hemisphere. And now that would lead to the depression. And there's a couple of different places. The further back the lesion, the greater chance of depression if you have a lesion on the right side. So if you have a lesion on the right side in the back, or if you have a lesion in the left side in the front, both of those things tend to lead to depression. And depression has probable association with decreased right posterior activity and increased right frontal activity. So the right back part of the brain is decreased in activity, and we can map out through mastering his emissary, we can map out multiple functions of the right parietal lobe and the things that it's responsible for. And if you have an actual physical problem, now I'm not saying that most people have. What I think, it's functional. I think most people are dealing with a functional problem of a decreased right posterior lobe and a decreased left frontal lobe, which is not inhibiting the right frontal lobe. I know I'm losing you there, but then the right frontal lobe now becomes overactive in and of itself. There's your depression, right? And what does the right frontal lobe do? It tries to see the world and map out the world and give us the big picture of the world. Well, what happens to us when we lose a part of our world? Like if you lose a spouse, what is actually happening to that person who loses a spouse? Well, when they lose a spouse, their world is different. They're trying to map out the world and they don't know how to map out the world. And so what happens? They stay in their right brain. They keep overactivation of that right brain because they can't figure out how to get that information out of the right brain over to the left brain. And they can't get it to the known part of the brain. So it gets stuck and it stays in overdrive into that right hemisphere. And we get that increased right frontal activity. Now, sometimes you can get hit in the head with a bat. Okay? You can get hit in the head with a bat and it can damage your left frontal lobe. And now the left frontal lobe cannot inhibit the right and you can have depression. I think that has a lot to do with what you see in the NFL with people like Junior Seau. I think NFL football players and college football players from that standpoint, I think they deal with repetitive trauma and the CTE that they deal with. I think that has to do with the way the trauma that hits on the brain and the damage that happens to the brain over and over and over. And those guys end up killing themselves because they're so depressed. And I think it has to do with the damage that occurred in that part of the brain on that left side, because not all of them happen. It doesn't happen to every football player. Every football player doesn't decide that they wants to commit suicide. But the ones that do, they have that damage on that left side, which is not being able to inhibit the right side. And we can understand depression, right? We can understand postpartum depression. We can understand, like the pastor used a great example, that sometimes when he delivers these sermons, that the pastors will enter into depression in the afternoon and evening after the sermon. And you know what our pastor said? He said last week when he gave the worry and anxiety sermon, it put him into a depression that lasted deep into Monday night after Sunday evening. He went to lunch with his family, didn't really help. He went home. This is what he did. He went home, he turned on the TV, and he laid down for 4 or 5 hours and mindlessly watched TV. Now, what do we know that does to a person's brain? Right? What happens when you get off your feet? You stop at information going to the right hemisphere. When you get off your feet, you decrease afferentation to the brain. You decrease input to the brain. Now you're stuck over there. You need a certain number of volts in order to get over to that other side. I don't know if I have it. I've got it later on in the deal. I'll come back to it right here. But because I do want to hit on that point, but I'll kind of get through that here in just a second. Even those specifically chosen by God have faced moments of depression. Lamentations 3:19 and 20. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. I remember my affliction and my wandering. I remember. Where does memory come from? Right lobe, right? Right lobe, right hemisphere activation. That's where our memory comes from. If I remember, I'm remembering over there in that right lobe. That now, if I remember it truly. Now, one thing that will happen to us, the further we get away from the event, the more our memory falters. So the longer we get away, the more time that has passed between an event, the less likely that we remember it properly. And that's when the left side starts making up stories about it because it doesn't get the big picture from the right side. And the left side starts lying to us. But Lamentations 3:21 and 22, yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Here you go. This is what I was having the deep conversation with my daughter because right here, Jeremiah is in 2 or 3 lines of scripture. He goes from being depressed to having hope, and he did it all inside his head. How did he do it? He remembered he actually got himself back on the pathway. It says right here, yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his, I got the 23. For his compassions never fail. He realized the big picture. For a moment, he had lost the big picture. But then he realized the big picture. And when he realized the big picture, he now understood the big picture. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassion never fail. That he realized in his right hemisphere the big picture of life. He came back to it. That's what the Bible brings to us, is it gives us the big picture. It sets our right hemisphere in order. I take my troubles to prayer. I cast my troubles on God. I take them to him. Where is God? It's in my right hemisphere. It's the big picture. It's the order of the universe. It's the whole picture. It's not the parts and the pieces. And it's there, over there on that side. I start to realize it. And now I drive through I get those worries and those tigers and those alligators out of my brain. And then it keeps going. So Lamentations 3:23. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Every day he remembers the promises of the Lord, and he remembers the compassions of the Lord. They are new every day. In Psalms 23:4, everybody knows this one. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. That's one of the things I've learned to do as I've gotten older. As I've gotten older, I've got when I get stressed out, I have to remember that there's balance in the universe, that my day is half great and half sucks. That's just the way it is. Half the people like me and half the people think I'm stupid. That's just the way it is. That it's okay. There was a devil and there was Jesus. There was some balance in the universe. It wasn't all just good. Your day's not great every day. Your day is half great every day. And your day is half sucky every day. And that's the order of the universe. And that's what brings me back to knowing right here. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, even though I've screwed up the things, even though I've got pressure on me, even though I'm not the best husband or the best father or the best businessman or the best chiropractor or the best son or the best brother, any of those things, but even though I'm not that good, I'm not alone. And God sees it all, and I'm still in the game. That's one of the coolest things about being a quarterback. Being a quarterback taught me at a young age when there is time on the clock, you are still in the game. One time we were down 4 points with 11 seconds to go in 1992 against TCU. There was 11 seconds. I was still in the game. I was not becoming a victim. I was not worried about losing the game. I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. The game wasn't over. I was in the game. And what I know about this little scripture right here, what it tells me is that, hey, it may look ugly today. I may have screwed the whole thing up, and it might be 100% my fault that I screwed the whole thing up. Be like the kicker for the Buffalo Bills last night. He probably feels like garbage today, but he's still in it. Hey, dude, you're still in it. You just got to get back and just play another play. Just play another play and see if you can get your eyes on the best thing that you can do today. That's what Jordan Peterson was talking about, right? That's the video that we watched. Think of the most absolute best thing that you can do today and set your day up to do that one thing. That will get you out of it. That will move you forward, because as depressed as you are, just keep moving forward. Just keep going right there. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. Yep, I've been through this before. It's been bad. We can handle it. We can do it. We can make it work. It's going to be all right. I've already got victory in the end anyway. I just got to get to the end. But right now, we still got things to do. So if you're going through depression, there's some things that you can do, right? Lamentations 3:24-26. I say to myself, I can communicate with myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore, I will wait for him. It's not going to be immediate. I will wait for him. Even though it might look bad today, I'm going to still play. I'm going to keep playing, and we're just going to see what happens. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord, right? I don't need to bring my troubles to you guys on this show. I don't need to bring my troubles to the internet. I don't need to work. I just need to keep working. I'm not telling you that I have a bunch of troubles. Don't worry about me. I'm just saying that just keep working. When you're depressed, it's hard to do because there's some physiological things that are going on right there. But that's kind of the way. It's like he's given us some things to think about. And there's 4 points that he wanted to talk about. God is our hope in sadness and depression. I agree. God's there spiritually. God's there physically. God's there neurologically. There's multiple systems working for you right there. God is not absent in the midst of our anguish. Nope. God is not absent anytime ever. Your neurology is not absent either. God's love protects us when debilitating exhaustion is present. Now, I do want to talk about what debilitating exhaustion is, and God's deliverance is coming, but not necessarily immediately. Sometimes we've got to work through it, but we got to work through it, and we got to go through it, right? And there is a neurology of depression, and I want you to remember this slide right here. So you guys on the radio are not going to be able to see this slide, but I want you to remember this slide, because this is the pathway to health. And I really ought to copyright that, but I didn't invent it. It's just the way it goes. It's like this right here is the pathway to health. You're going to get information into your brain. And when you get information into your brain, it's going to go down to your amygdala on the right, and then it's going to go up to the cortex on the right, and the cortex is going to see the big picture. It's going to have a knowing. It's going to know that there's no threat there. It's going to realize that there's no alligator and there's no tiger in the room. It's going to send the signal down to the right side amygdala and turn it off. It's going to dampen and turn it down, calm the right side amygdala down to turn off the stress response, to send information over to the left. And when the right hemisphere is communicating properly to the left hemisphere, it also gives the left hemisphere the proper amount of dopamine that it needs. That is so crucial right there. I was listening to Anna Lemke's Dopamine Nation today and yesterday about exactly how we get the proper thing. And it's like cold plunges. Cold plunges are the new rave. Everybody's doing the cold plunge, right? What does the cold plunge do? It drives adrenaline like 500 and something percent. It drives adrenaline. I was just writing it down. 530% increase in norepinephrine, which is for us it's the adrenaline on the right side of the brain. 530% increase, and this is 1 hour in 57 degree temperature water. There was a plasma increase of 530% of norepinephrine on the right side, which is the adrenaline on the right side. And when you create that much increase in adrenaline on the right side, it pushed it over to the left side and created a 250% increase in dopamine, but it was exactly the appropriate dopamine on that left side. That right there, the adrenaline dopamine connection, that relationship right there is the debilitating exhaustion. That's when someone has, to go back a couple of slides, and it says that God's love protects us when debilitating exhaustion is present. We've been there. COVID will do that to you, right? COVID will create almost, the original COVID back in 20 and 21 would almost create enough debilitating exhaustion that you didn't even want to get up and go take a shower. I remember being irritated that I had to get up and brush my teeth, or being irritated that I had to get up and go walk. Right? Because irritation is that's when the dopamine is not in the sweet spot. I'm either going to have no motivation. If you're so depressed that you cannot move, you're stuck in depression and you cannot get on your feet and you cannot move. It's just debilitating. What is happening right there is the relationship between adrenaline and dopamine between the right side and the left side. And we've used the example of the guy that's taking his girl out on a date, and he's anticipating, and he's anticipating, and he's anticipating, and then she gets a headache. Remember that story? And then when she gets a headache, what happens to him? His dopamine crashes and his adrenaline raises, and then all of a sudden his motor cortex shuts off. That's what Andrew Huberman taught me about working out. That's the reason David Goggins can continue to work out when he is exhausted, is because he can anticipate the next good thing. He can keep anticipating, which keeps driving the dopamine on the left side of the brain. So when you get yourself into that debilitating exhaustion, get on your feet and walk. Get on your feet and walk. Get in a cold shower. Let the water run over you. Drive the adrenaline and drive it over to the dopamine and get the dopamine going. And now the left hemisphere will dampen the left amygdala. And now we've got that lower emotional brain calmed down, and that upper brain is now rational and functioning properly. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And depression is the destruction of all that. Depression is this little thing that's going on the next slide is now the information coming into the thalamus is so strong going down to the amygdala that once it gets to the cortex on the right side, the cortex is unable to turn it off. And because it's unable to turn it off, we get nothing to the left. So now what happens to dopamine? We have a low dopamine level. We have a high adrenaline level and a low dopamine level, which means we either have no motivation. That's usually what happens when we have low dopamine. We have no motivation. We have no anticipation for anything. And what will we do? We will go search for external sources of dopamine like sugar and chocolates and alcohol and pornography and all those things that we do. So I like to reverse engineer this stuff. And I like to say, look, if you're dealing with those things, if you're dealing with sadness and depression, if you're like, man, I just seem to be depressed, what does it mean? Or if you say this, I can't stop eating sugar. I can't quit. Man, I just have to have alcohol to get through the day. In Anna Lipke's book, the Dopamine Nation, one of the things she talked about was cold plunges for an alcoholic. He got over his alcoholism by getting into this 57-degree water and even colder. He cold plunged. So what happened when he cold plunged? He drove his adrenaline, which drove his dopamine, which increased his dopamine. And it happened on both sides. Hey, I'm running out of time. I hope you guys enjoyed that show. This is the end of the show. We will see you tomorrow night at 6. Sorry, that was really quick. But yeah, so think about that. If you can reverse engineer the idea and you can say, okay, I can't quit eating sugar. What should that mean to you? That should mean this is happening. You don't have proper left side dopamine from the right side. Get up on your feet and walk. Exercise. Get yourself moving. Get social. Do those things that we talked about. I can't quit eating sugar. I can't quit looking at pornography. What's pornography doing? It's doing exactly the same thing. It's giving you dopamine on that side. That's the way. That's the neurological explanation, to the best of my ability, I think, tonight, of what depression is. This is what's happening. It's the difference between this slide and this slide. This is health. That's what we're trying to accomplish. We want the right hemisphere to shut down the right amygdala. We want the left hemisphere. We want the big picture to get sent to the left side. We want the left side to know there's no threat. We now the left and the right can communicate and keep themselves functioning well. We can focus when we need to focus. We can pay attention to the external world when we need to pay attention to the external world. We can see the big picture and we can work out the details, and all that can happen. That's what we're trying to get to. And that's what those guys do. When he talks about that, he's in one scripture, right? He's in one scripture. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yes, I can be imbalanced. I can remember those things and be downcast. My soul can be downcast within me. And within the same breath, yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. In 1 second, I can be depressed and undepressed. Don't tell me there's a chemical imbalance in that. That cannot be factual. Like I can be depressed because I'm not focusing on the proper things. I don't have my eyes forward. Haven't picked up my cross. I'm not walking up the hill, and that can cause depression for me. And at the next moment, I can be undepressed because I can realize what is happening, and I can move myself forward. And that's what I got for you tonight. I hope it's good. Let me check this chat right here. Oh, so there's some good stuff right here. Yeah, so I got some. Yeah, there you go, Nathan. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. And some of this show, if you watch the beginning of the show, that's the rational and the emotional part. I hope that explains that right there. Yeah, Lewis, you've been feeling a little down lately, right? Okay, where are we in the year? We're in the middle of winter, right? We're in the middle of winter, and I guarantee you, if you're not taking vitamin D, your vitamin D levels are dropping. That's one thing you can do immediately is take your vitamin D. 5,000 IUs of vitamin D right now is going to be tremendous for you. And then the second thing is it's hard to get out and exercise and move when we're in this phase. So what is the natural progression in the winter? The natural progression in the winter is to not move, get depressed, eat sugar. Right? Isn't that what we do? Isn't that what everybody says? Well, it's wintertime, man. We just got through Christmas and all that stuff. And yeah, well, we're still eating sugar, right? We're still all in that same level. We're still eating sugar. And so if you're feeling that, you can reverse engineer it. I would highly suggest it. That's the way I do it now. When I get a headache, I ask myself, and like I literally never think about taking a Tylenol. We don't even have it in the house. It's not going to be a thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to take an Advil. I'm not. I had two people tell me. One of them told me today that he fell down the ladder, putting Christmas lights, putting his Christmas stuff up in the attic. He tripped and slipped down the ladder a little bit, but he was fine. He drank some water and he took an Advil, and he was fine. And another person said she's got a gluten sensitivity and she ate pizza for lunch and now her knees are all flared up and now her knees hurt but that's okay. She took an aspirin and I'm like, okay, see, if you're really studying wellness and you really start to get it and you really start to grasp these concepts right here, what you'll do is you'll just reverse engineer this whole thing. I ate gluten. My knees are flared up. How do I get anti-inflammatories into my body that aren't going to kill my liver? My fish oil and my turmeric, right? If I ate something that flared me up, number one, quit eating gluten if you have a gluten sensitivity, right? That's what we want to do, right? And then the second thing is I can figure it out. And it's almost like we can reverse engineer every single problem that we have. If I'm inflamed, I want to have anti-inflammatories. What are my anti-inflammatories? Fish oil and turmeric. Those are the things that are anti-inflammatory, right? If I'm feeling a little down lately, what's happening in my brain is that right there. And now I just got to get my feet moving. I got to get on my feet, get social, get on my feet, get my eyes up, and let that run just a minute and see how you do. That will be better. Thanks for the comments. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for sticking around a little bit longer than normal. And I hope this was great. If you have anything else I can do for you, please let me know. Send me a text. Send me a message, however you want to get a hold of me. And you guys have a great evening. We'll be back tomorrow night at 6.